The morning sun had barely broken through the towering glass walls of Ashford Industries when Julian Carrington, one of the city's youngest billionaires, felt the weight of the world pressing down on him. Sitting alone in the sleek, cold boardroom, he stared at the mountain of paperwork sprawled across the polished mahogany table. The numbers glared back at him like accusations. Every financial projection, every investment, every deal he had poured his life into for the past decade was teetering on the brink of collapse. A single misstep, a single miscalculation, and his empire would crumble into dust. Julian's hands trembled as he gripped the pen before him, hovering over the bankruptcy documents. The room was silent, save for the faint hum of the city below. He had built everything from the ground up, sacrificing friendships, love, and even sleep, and now it all seemed meaningless. A bitter lump formed in his throat. The empire he had built with sheer determination and relentless ambition was about to be erased in the blink of an eye. He had no idea how close he had come to losing everything, not just the money, but the legacy he had dreamed of leaving behind. But fate has a strange way of intervening. Miles away, in a small sunlit apartment cluttered with toys, school books, and the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee, Simon Hayes, a single dad, was starting his day in a very different world. Simon's life was simple, chaotic, and often exhausting. Every morning was a balancing act, getting his 7-year-old daughter, Mia, ready for school while juggling his freelance bookkeeping assignments. Simon didn't have billions. In fact, he barely scraped by. But he had something more valuable to him than money, hope, integrity, and an unwavering determination to do right by his daughter. That morning, Simon had just finished reviewing a client's expense reports when he noticed something unusual, a minor discrepancy, easily overlooked by anyone else. He frowned, squinting at the numbers. "This can't be right," he murmured. It was a small error buried in the fine print of a larger contract, but something about it gnawed at him. He double-checked, then triple-checked, his brow furrowed in concentration. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a potential lifeline for someone who didn't even know he existed yet. At the same time, Julian's world was spinning out of control. He had summoned his board of directors to his office for what would be the final discussion. The cameras outside captured the media frenzy as reporters speculated whether Julian Carrington, the man who once seemed untouchable, would now declare bankruptcy in front of the world. Julian's heart pounded as he glanced around the room at familiar faces, executives he had trusted, advisors he had leaned on, and saw only strained expressions and polite concern. They had done their jobs, but the numbers didn't lie, and right now the numbers were brutal. It was then, in a moment that seemed almost cinematic, that Simon Hayes made the leap that would change both their lives. He had received an urgent request for help from a friend working as an intern at a financial consulting firm. The message was simple: check this contract. There's a chance it's costing them millions. Simon didn't know the client's name, only that it was a high-profile corporate account. Curiosity mingled with a sense of responsibility. He grabbed his laptop, opened the attachment, and began poring over the data with meticulous care. Hours passed, sunlight shifting from the pale morning to a warm, golden afternoon, and Simon refused to leave his chair. And then he saw it. A single line, hidden within a dense sea of financial clauses. A miscalculation, a technical error in the interest projections of a major loan, an error that, if corrected, would save millions from being erroneously counted as debt. Simon's eyes widened. His pulse raced as he realized the implications. He took a deep breath, composing a clear, concise email detailing the mistake, and sent it to the contact he had been instructed to reach. Back at Ashford Industries, Julian's boardroom was tense with anticipation. The pen was still in his hand, the ink poised to sign what would have been the end of an era. As his assistant entered with a secure message from the consulting firm, handling his accounts, Julian barely registered her presence. He tore open the envelope and scanned the contents. His eyes froze, and then he read it again, this time aloud in disbelief. There's a mistake, a miscalculation, that could reverse the debt projections? Julian's voice cracked slightly. The executives leaned in, confusion and hope flickering across their faces. He handed the document around, watching as their expressions shifted from concern to astonishment. The numbers aligned perfectly, correcting the erroneous debt figures, and suddenly, what had seemed like an unavoidable collapse was now a chance. A lifeline he hadn't expected. Julian sank into his chair, letting out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. The magnitude of what had just happened began to sink in. His empire wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it wasn't broken beyond repair. He hadn't been saved by an advisor, a lawyer, or a miracle of luck. He had been saved by the keen eye and honest diligence of a stranger, a single dad working quietly in his sunlit apartment, miles away from the chaos of high finance. Tears welled up in Julian's eyes, not just from relief, but from a sudden, profound sense of gratitude. He had always believed that money and power were everything, but in that moment, he understood something more important. Kindness, integrity, and the willingness to help without expectation could change lives in ways no fortune ever could.